I was never really an arcade kid, so I can't say that I grew up with Metal Slug because I hadn't heard about it until recently, despite being very familiar with the
Enemy chaser!
meme through other games. Metal Slug Tactics appears to be at first glance a really well designed turn-based strategy game that emphasizes teamwork and extra objectives, which can make each mission much more difficult if you try to go for it, especially when there are time constraints and all you want to do is to rescue that prisoner of war for that bonus EXP and a heartfelt
Thank you!
When you first pick up the game, you will not encounter any problems until you begin to go beyond the first zone and reach the last boss of each stage. It's as if they didn't care to address any of the flaws that arose during their demo version. I and many other people have experienced a lot of bugs like characters dying and being revived and suddenly stop working completely to being unable to do any damage to anything. And that's not it, there's also morphing into mummies and not being able to convert back, bugging out and having to restart the game to fix it, only to be placed in some random location where they should not be able to reach. Which makes it impossible to actually beat it normally without cheesing out a lot of these bosses with your stockpiled assets, which wouldn't you know it, also will at times stop working or not even deploy. The game will occasionally freeze and lock you out of the side objectives and give you the impression that it isn't a finished game. I've been having a lot of screen tearing because they have no built-in options for VSync or anything, so they should really go back and fix things. It's just the fact that it exudes just arcade vibes with its visuals and lively music and dialogue alone that draws you in. This really does show that they put a lot of effort into creating a very positive arcade-like experience that emulates what you would expect to hear and see if you were to enter into a bustling arcade back in the 90s. The boss designs were fantastic with different mechanics and ways of dealing with them. It's just a shame that you can't even win half of the time because most of them are riddled with so many flaws, including the final boss of the city, which just is hands down not winnable. The game does feel difficult at first until you get the hang of it. It's not too awful once you understand that you need to rotate your synchronizations where you place your units in firing range of each other and your target to do extra damage to take them out in one turn, though this is restricted to once per turn when it comes to bosses, since they don't want it to be that easy. Even if you do make a mistake, you can just reset your turn and it doesn't really matter because you do still have 5 revives and resupply drops that can replenish them if you remember to pick them up from the roguelike element locations that grant you a variety of different effects like bonus EXP to level up your team more. This allows you to get better passives, new abilities, and better gun upgrades and effects for the later stages, so focusing on your bonus EXP is pretty crucial. You want to save your primary guns mostly for bosses in dire situations, and of course things like the Metal Slug, which is absolutely massive when dealing damage. Putting aside all of the bugs and issues that we talked about previously, it's got a lot of good things going for it that makes you want to try and try again despite never really having a chance of success because it needs to be fixed. And there really isn't much content here, and it isn't early access, so there definitely is some desire for you to want to have more content put in, possibly through some DLC or something, but once again, due to the overwhelming amount of bugs that make it physically impossible to have a chance of winning on any difficulty, it's still very far away from being a game that I could ever recommend to you, even if it is quite aesthetically pleasing to play through.